In just one day, the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, more commonly referred to as the Conference of Parties on the UNFCCC or COP27, will commence in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. In addition to the global debate around moving to a low-carbon world, new policies by governments around the world to reduce carbon emissions will be key to protecting the environment, public health, well-being, jobs, and industry. Between 1950 and today, the population of cities around the world has more than quadrupled, with over 42 billion people now living in urban centers. Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, has been at the forefront of efforts to mitigate the negative impact of carbon emissions. The city's urban population is estimated to reach 70% by 2050 from the present 55%. This burgeoning urban population means more cars on the roads and more household, commercial and industrial waste in the city. Indeed, the Lagos state government estimates that the transportation sector accounts for over 60% of greenhouse gas emissions in the state. Joining us today to discuss the implications of this situation for the city and the policies that are helping to protect the environment and build a more sustainable and climate-resilient Lagos is Dr. Adedolapo Fasawe, a public health practitioner and expert who is also the GM for the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. And of course, sitting with us through the discussion is Mr. Bismarck Rwani, economist. Okay, great to have you on our show, Dr. Dolapo. My first question is really around the context of climate change. How is Lagos State being impacted by climate change, and what is its relevance to the global discussion?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, good morning, everyone, and I'm happy to be here. It's interesting that the Conference of Parties 27 is being brought to Africa for the first time. And COP27 is an opportunity for world leaders to discuss how to tackle and deal with climate change as agreed in a recent Paris Agreement. Now, Lagos is a coastal city. We're already below sea level. A lot of African communities and cities are on the coasts. One of the emerging and most difficult thing to deal with right now is rising sea levels. And you would realize that most of the people that live along the coastal areas are low income. It's highly populated, densely populated. Their houses are not built to withstand floods. So if we do not start to address directly the issues of rising sea levels by tackling global warming and climate change, then it's going to be disastrous for us.
And given the urgency of the situation, what are the specific policies your agency is embarking on, or the government as a whole, to try and tackle? I mean, there's so many issues. There's the pollution, there's rising sea levels. What is the strategy?
Okay, the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency is saddled with the sole responsibility of protecting the air, the water, and the land of Lagos State. And how do we do this? I am a medical doctor who had just moved into the environment space. And in moving into the environment space, I realized that a lot of us, I'm sorry to say, highly educated people, do not understand the concept of global warming and climate change. We kind of think it's futuristic or it's for the European countries and all. So we have many initiatives across the state. It's multi-sectoral. It is not only the Ministry of Environment. We have the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. We have the Ministry of Education. We have the Ministry of Economic Planning and Budget, putting more funds towards advocacy. I'll just list out a few of our initiatives. The Lagos State Ministry of Environment recently launched its Climate Action Plan, which aims to achieve net zero by 2050. Net zero means that the amount of carbon footprints we're producing from our anthropogenic activities, cars on the road, emissions, manufacturing, we're mopping up somehow in other places. And the most natural, cheapest, and most available form of mopping up carbon in the air is trees and greens and grass. So when we have governments come in and say we need to plant trees, we need to plant trees on our setbacks, and we call it beautification. It's not necessarily beautification.
There's a bigger picture.
Yes, there's a bigger picture. Yes.
Yeah, and I need to bring in Mr. Rewane here, because as an economist, you know, all these twin issues of cars, emissions from cars, rapid urbanization, what are some of the hardcore economic implications of climate change in a city, a mega city like Lagos?
Firstly, I think that if we had power supply, regular power supply, the amount of fumes by all the generators in this place is more than all of what we're talking about. So I think, one, because there's a reliable power supply, there's less emission because people are not using fewer generators. But what caught my attention was when she was talking about beautification and green. I do know that 3-4 years ago, or 5 years ago, on Alfred Rewane Avenue, there were all these trees. The same government that is talking about this went there and cut all those trees off. Why would they do that if there is coordination between the information that, or the objectives which we are trying to talk about now and what they're doing, right? I cannot understand those contradictions and how we want to get out, because it's first and foremost, it reduces the ambience of the place, it increases the pressure, right? But more than anything else, it sends signals, because investors are coming to the state, investors are coming to the country. They want to have, they enjoy most of the ambience and the beautification things, and also enjoy the peace that comes with it, the trees, the birds, the natural, biodiversity. So I think it's important that whilst on one hand, some agencies are working towards achieving this, on the other hand, some other agencies are working to actually contradict this and create problems. And those mixed signals from a macroeconomic perspective are the things that discourage investors. And Rolake, you know more about this, that it discourage investors, and they get concerned about what exactly are the key goals of
I mean, thanks for bringing that point. She did mention the collaboration that's now taking place between different agencies, and I'm really thrilled to see the Eco Clean Air initiative, which I think many people have underestimated the health impact for years, and then the consequent impact on your livelihoods and your ability to function. So can you tell us a bit about some of the reforms that are ongoing now in that space?
Thank you, Mr. Rewane. What also caught my attention in what you just said is investors, urbanization. When we're a developing nation and we're urbanizing, we have to balance things. That is where net zero comes in. There has to be more roads, there has to be more buildings, there has to be space to do business. No responsible government, I repeat again, will wake up one day, carry their saws, and start cutting down trees for no reason. At times, something has to go for something. And I am here to announce that we have an agency called Lagos State Parks and Gardens. For every tree cut in Lagos by the government, another one is planted somewhere else. Another one is planted somewhere else. I'll also talk about the economic cost of global warming and climate change. In 2021, LASEPA did a study with World Bank, and the economic loss is about $2.1 billion to Lagos alone, not to Nigeria. And you ask me how and why. Transportation. When we were looking at air pollution, before we went into the Eco Clean Air Initiative, we realized in source apportionment that majority of the pollutants was from the traffic sector. In developed nations, it was from manufacturing and industrialization. You will see that in China, even before the advent of Corona, people wore nose masks. And this GDP of Nigeria, 30%, almost 40% of the GDP of Nigeria is being contributed by Lagos State. So when we are sick from air pollution, when our outputs, our outcomes, our efficiency is destroyed by air pollution and floods and food insecurity, we are losing money.
Dr. Fasawe, I mean, this is quite a fascinating discussion, and I'm so glad we're having, but we have to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to probe a bit more and actually ask you what we can do about the cars on the roads. So we're going to take a short break now, and then when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Dr. Fasawe of LASECBA and Mr. Bismarck Rawani, economist and financial analyst. Thank you. Well, you're watching Business Week here on Arise News, and I've been talking with Dr. Fasawe of the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency and Mr. Bismarck Rawani. Thanks for joining us on the show. So let's look at some of the specific initiatives that Lagos State is embarking on and what the economic benefits or even health benefits may be.
Okay. I had said earlier on that it's a multi-sectoral system. Global warming, climate change, and attacking it is not an event. It is a way of life. We just have to keep going at it. So I will tell you, and I'm glad to also announce, that the Lagos State Ministry of Transportation is launching a system whereby our mass transit will run on gas. That reduces the amount of emissions. Emissions cause 30,000 people died in Lagos in 2021, documented, out of air pollution. And unfortunately, 75% of these people were children who were exposed to obnoxious substances in the air. So if we pool and mass transit is safe, is available, and people like you and I can go on mass transit, we have done a good thing. And that will be launched next year. I will go to Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. They just recently launched a Lagos State gas policy. And the main thrust of this policy is to make LPG and compressed natural gas available, affordable, and reachable to everyone. How do we do this? Advocacy, education, information, and communication. Air pollution kills. Air pollution kills. And that is what brought us to the Eco Clean Air Initiative. And what we really do in the Eco Clean Air Initiative is go into communities. And it's a two-pronged approach. We tell them, bring your trash for cash after advocacy. Bring your firewoods and your cooking apparatus. We will give you gas cylinders and gas. It is funny that we did a study where scientists, the amount it costs you to refill a 3-kilogram gas is less than what it costs you to buy firewood. Your efficiency is improved, your output is improved, you fry more akara, you make more money, but you wouldn't know until you try it. So Mr. Sanwo-Olu, in his magnanimity, has approved that we run these studies and give out free gas cylinders. Also, in our Trash for Cash initiative, we ask people to bring empty plastic bottles and rubber and papers, plastic waste. They are non-biodegradable. They clog our drains, both our primary drains and secondary drains. And what do we give them in return? Cash, health insurance. Bring me 20 bags of empty bottles and I will give you health insurance for you and your family for a year, which covers childbirth and other illnesses.
So I mean, Dr. Fasawe, those are very laudable initiatives, and you know the economic empower element is really important. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mr. Rawani, is looking at all these initiatives at sort of the micro level, in a sense, and what is happening to the environment is, if we take it to the macro and economic picture for a mega city like this, what sort of policy do you think will be the biggest transformational element? Because we have the transport infrastructure, we have the environment, but from a growth perspective, what should a mega city like this be pursuing as a strategic economic priority?
I think, firstly, we are looking for growth. And growth is a function of...
And sustainable growth,
yes,
actually.
and growth and sustainable growth is a function of productivity. Productivity has two angles. One, skill, the other one, technology. So for technology to run efficiently, you need power, right? So, and you have what you call just not affordable power, but quality power, basically wind and others. But then the skill level, right? Because power also gives you light. Light gives the children the ability to read, and the study shows very clearly that where there's been solar power in schools, the performance of those schools are 30% better than the ones where they had no power. Hospitals, even better still. So it's a combined, it's an integrated approach, which I think addresses it. But the other thing you must note that in the World Book of Numbers, the 6 fastest growing cities in the world of the top 20 are in Nigeria, and they're not, when I say fastest growing in terms of population growth in those cities, I'm more in the southeast of Nigeria. There's Abuja, Port Harcourt, Uyo, Nnewi, Onitsha, right? But also, the greatest pollution is also in that part. Nnewi and Onitsha have the highest, in fact, Onitsha has the highest pollution in the world. It's in the Guinness Book of Records.
Yes.
Now, so how do you deal with that? Because pollution leads to all sorts of things. Now, you have to deal with it in an integrated approach, and not just federal government, state governments, local governments. Because here we are making the state government synonymous with the city. The city of Atlanta runs totally differently and independently from the state of Georgia.
Yes.
Right? Mm. So we now need to actually unbundle and make sure the city or the mayor of Etiosa and the mayor of, chairman of the local government become effective, right? And so that transition has to take place, not just the evolution of powers from the federal to the state government, from the state governments to the local, the municipalities, so that the man in Alimosho knows what he's doing. And so that calls for a change in the mindset and also change in the...
Yeah, I mean, because we're running out of time, clearly politics and policy does have an impact on economics, but I wanted to sort of wrap up with you, Dr. Fasawe, and you can respond to that in where is all this heading? So what would success look like in terms of your policies on climate, environment, and sustainability?
Success is when we all start to understand that charity begins at home. Global warming and climate change is what affects every one of us. Every single thing you point to your drain, not sorting your wastes, your way of life. If we can change mindsets, educate the younger ones, multi-sectoral collaboration. You spoke about municipal, state, local. I'm even thinking as far as international climate financing. Global warming is global. There's green funds everywhere. COP is coming to Africa, and that's a good thing. It would give us opportunities for world leaders to pump funds that we would account for and be able to measure impact and evaluate what these funds have done for us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adedolapo Fasawe and Mr. Bizra Rwani. Quite a fascinating conversation.